60 Minutes. Rewind.
The FBI revealed this week that 15 of the 19 men who attacked America on the 11th of September were from Saudi Arabia. But how can that be? Aren't the Saudis, at least the Saudi royal family, our staunchest ally in the Middle East? It's not easy to answer that because it's not easy for an American journalist to get into Saudi Arabia. But we were invited there last week by Prince Alwaleed bin Talal bin Abdul Aziz Al Saud, the grandson of the kingdom's founder and the 5th richest man in the world. Not only that, you've seen him before. It was Prince Alwaleed who came to New York to give Mayor Giuliani $10 million for the bereaved families. But then the prince started criticizing America's policy towards Israel and the Palestinians, and the mayor told him he could keep his check. That created quite a furor, but as the controversy heated up, the prince was already back home, back in the Saudi Arabian desert, which is where we caught up with him last week. You go to New York. You give Mayor Giuliani a check for $10 million, and he accepts it. And everybody's smiling, right? What went wrong?
You know, I went to New York with a message. After this catastrophic and horrendous act that took place in New York, I felt that the bridges between Islam, Arabism, and Saudi Arabia specifically, and New York in specific, and United States in general, the bridges were hit badly.
So to rebuild those bridges, the prince offered some friendly advice. He issued a statement urging Americans to get to what he called the root of the problem and pay attention to the plight of the Palestinians. That's when Giuliani told him what he could do with his check. I think the question was one of timing. At least I think that's how many people in New York saw it. New Yorkers had just suffered an enormous tragedy at the hands of, let's face it, Arabs. And here you are, an Arab, making a gesture of goodwill, but they didn't want to be lectured.
Sooner or later, America has to wake up and look at the roots of the problem. And I talk as a friend, a very sincere friend of America. I have a lot of business in New York, a lot of friends in New York, and my money is where my mouth is.
No one could argue with that. The prince has invested billions in New York. In fact, you could spend a long time here, stay in some of the best hotels, do some upmarket shopping, and take care of your banking without ever leaving real estate owned in large part by Prince Alwaleed. And it's all run from the command center of his empire, a 2-story building in downtown Riyadh. The corporation is called Kingdom. On the 2nd floor, the power and the glory. So, we used to ask people how they made their first $1 million. How did you make your first billion?
First billion or million?
Billion.
Well, you know, I began with, my father gave me $30,000.
30 grand.
And gave me a very
He did
small
it,
villa.
the prince will tell you, the Saudi way. Whenever a contract is awarded in the kingdom, some member of the royal family gets a commission. In America, it would be called a kickback. The prince also made some shrewd real estate deals. And then, with the $600 million he'd accumulated, he invested in Citicorp shares, which he thought were undervalued. And he was right. You worth how much today?
20 billion.
20 billion.
A bit below that, you know.
You're not quite up to the 20 billion figure yet.
Now, well, when actually I was, but now it went below. It's tough.
Tough, but not that tough. This is the Prince's Palace, 317 rooms, finished 2 years ago at a cost of more than $100 million.
You like the house?
Nice house.
We go right.
Nice, but it takes a long time to get anywhere. Up and down is easy, there are a dozen elevators. Along and across is hard. And since the prince is a busy man, one of his assistants is on hand to offer a guided tour. Inside the palace walls, she can dress the way she would on Rodeo Drive. Just on the other side, she'd have to be covered in black from head to toe. How long does it take you to get to know your way around here?
About 2 months.
And while the prince has a fully equipped gym, it's not entirely necessary. A power walk through his wardrobe provides enough exercise for all but the most ambitious. And here we have... A private cinema is a must because there are no public cinemas in Saudi Arabia. If you want to go to the movies, you have to stay at home. In Saudi Arabia, public entertainment of any kind is against the law. Cooking is not one of the prince's hobbies, but he does have a kitchen. And these are the Highness's fridges?
Exactly.
For the royal snacks?
Yes.
Lots of fruit. There are 17 dining rooms, and since the palace is not that far from the office, the prince comes home every day for lunch. And every day, a different dining room. Today the table is set next to the pool, one of his indoor pools. Among the guests today, and most every day, his personal physician and full-time hairdresser. Also at the lunch, but we weren't allowed to film her, was his 24-year-old third wife. His courtiers are here too, dozens of men whose job is simply to hang out with the prince. After lunch, the prince dispenses largesse to a selected group of Saudi's neediest. Then coffee is served in the jungle room. The prince decorated this one himself.
I like hunting a lot. And all the animals we have here, zebras, tigers, giraffes, but all these animals were really hunted by me and my family.
Every animal here was
Each single animal, and has picture under it also. So no one could dispute this.
Do you remember anything about these fellows?
No, these are really just very passive. They don't just come and say, kill me.
Well, they got what they asked for.
Tip.
The prince likes his home, likes his life. He is a happy man. And that, he says, is what he has in common with the people of Saudi Arabia. Happiness.
At the end of the day, I'm happy and my people are happy. I have nothing to hide. I'm happy. I don't feel guilty at all.
I'm perfectly prepared to believe that you're happy, Prince. There's very little reason
I'm
for
not
you
guilty
to be.
also.
Okay. But when you tell me that the majority of the people in Saudi Arabia are happy, how do you know that?
I know that because I interact with them a lot. And Saudi Arabia is a country that's stable, that has no problems.
Prince, if I'm not mistaken, you just said to me that Saudi Arabia is a country with no problems?
But I'm telling you, Saudi Arabia has no civil unrest, no civil disobedience, sorry. Saudi Arabia is a very stable country. Sure, you had these, we had these bombs here and there, but they're all related to a certain subject.
Well, Saudi Arabia, if you'll permit me, sir, has no civil unrest because there's so many cops around. People would be afraid to go out on the street. You couldn't demonstrate
Did you
here
see them in the street?
if you wanted to.
Did you see them in the street?
My question is, if they did go to the street,
Yeah.
how many minutes would it be before they'd be arrested?
No, they will not be. They will not be going because it's the system in Saudi Arabia and most Arab countries does not allow demonstrations because this may create the civil disobedience. Obviously, it's not allowed in Saudi Arabia. I acknowledge that, but the bulk of Saudis are not upset. They're happy with what's going on in Saudi Arabia.
But if they weren't happy, how would you know it? They wouldn't come talk to you.
No, look, you don't have direct polling, but in my particular case, I can claim that I have my own polling, and you will see that in desert on Thursday.
On Thursday, we went to the desert, which since biblical times has been the place to stay in touch with the universe. And the prince certainly does that. He's surrounded by satellite dishes and giant television screens, all set up by a man who used to run communications for the White House. The desert was lit up by a bonfire and by dozens of spotlights revealing falcons and camels and a feast fit for a prince. The vast silence of the desert was broken only by the wail of mobile phones and by voices from America.
Ours will be a broad campaign, thought on many fronts.
But this is what the prince really wanted to show us. This is where the action was. Hundreds of people, men only of course, gathered inside a tent the size of a football field. They were all waiting to see His Royal Highness. It happens every week and goes on for hours, an ancient Saudi tradition called a majlis, or assembly. Every man gets to see the prince, gets to present a petition asking for assistance, for a house or a car, or for medical treatment abroad. Dozens of princes, including Crown Prince Abdullah, his uncle who runs the country, do the same thing. It's what the royal family calls democracy Saudi style. You seem to be dealing with people from very different walks of life, huh?
What do you mean?
I mean, some people don't look poor at all.
Well, most of them are poor people, but when they come here, obviously, they come, with the assumption that this is a very important occasion in their life and career. It's like going, for example, in the United States, someone going to the White House, meeting George Bush, or meeting the Secretary of Treasury, for example.
Is there any significance to kissing the right shoulder?
It's out of respect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you've got a reputation of being generous.
Perhaps. I love it. It's a duty. I love this. I love this. I adore it. Yeah. And look at them. They all love me. I love them. Look, from their heart. That's an incredible form of democracy.
And if you want to hear how deeply they love the prince and the royal family, listen to the poetry. Men come from all over the kingdom to praise the prince. Alwaleed, however, seemed to have other things on his mind. But this man caught the prince's attention. He came to express his views on the man who humiliated the prince, the mayor of New York. Giuliani, you may not want to hear this, he says, but damn you, you lowlife, you're a lackey of the Jews. That is what he said.
The story will continue after this.
Do you think that part of your problem in New York might have been simply the fact that you're a Saudi, and Osama bin Laden is a Saudi, and there is a very deep antipathy towards Saudis in the United States right now?
I don't blame Mr. Giuliani and the people in New York at all for being very worried and concerned about what took place over there. And being a Saudi, for sure, it's scary at this stage. But I think with time, they'll understand that this is an isolated incident. This has nothing to do with real Saudis that really love and admire America.
But do the real Saudis really love America? Not according to Saad al-Faghi, a surgeon who was jailed and then forced out of Saudi Arabia 7 years ago for advocating reform.
There is almost a universal feeling that the Americans are conspiring with the royal elite to loot the country, loot its resources, and to cover the oppression and the bad deeds of the regime.
What was the reaction in Saudi Arabia to those pictures of the Twin Towers collapsing?
Excuse me, I don't want to offend anybody, but I'm just conveying facts. The first reaction was jubilation that America has taken its punishment from God, whoever is behind it. People immediately started exchanging text messages in their mobile phones, and later on they started killing sheep and camels and inviting friends and families to celebrate. For them, it was the collapse of American financial empire, American influence in the world.
So who are the real Saudis? The prince and his retainers? Or the 15 men, that's 15 Saudis out of the 19 who attacked America on the 11th of September?